Okay, we are online. Good afternoon. My name is Ezran from Congress Media from Germany. We are the organizer of different events in the field of social collaboration and digital workplace. And yes, and also the organizer of this Enterprise Digital Summit Google Hangout sessions that we're doing periodically, which is a quite a difficult word. So it's always an online panel discussion that we're doing in this format, and we're happy to be here, and I'm happy to be here with some nice guests for this afternoon. We want to discuss a little bit about the state of the digital workplace. So the digital workplace is quite a term which is on vogue right now in a lot of companies, in a lot of projects. People are running digital workplace projects, and we have to look behind the scenes. What is the digital workplace? What is behind it? What are the challenges? So this is what we want to discuss this afternoon. And then also, what is the state of the adoption of the digital workplace in the UK, but also elsewhere in Europe? And therefore, I've got quite a nice group of people joining me in this discussion. So I just want to introduce them to you first, and then give the word to themselves to introduce themselves in this round. But first, starting first with Cécile Desmailliers from France. She is a researcher and also helps company as a consultant with the complexity of the change. Then next to her on my screen down here is David Terrar from the UK, from the Agile Elephants. He's our production partner for our UK event, which is called the Enterprise Digital Summit, which is coming up in about 4 weeks' time in London. But he will introduce himself as well. Then we have another French guest, is Michel Ezran from Lecko from Paris. Hello, Michel. So now I've got you twice in this. I don't know. So anyhow, Michel, he's with Lecko. Lecko is a consultancy firm, also doing quite some interesting studies on the adoption of social collaboration within France, but also elsewhere in Europe. And last but not least, I'd like to welcome also Paul Miller from the Digital Workplace Group, CEO from the Digital Workplace Group. Well, he's doing quite some interesting activities in the field of the adoption and the discussion about the digital workplace. He's also one of those people who coined a little bit the term of the digital workplace. So there we have someone to talk about the definition of the digital workplace. So, but first, maybe Cécile, have I introduced you right? Do you have something to add on my introduction to you?
Sure, thank you very much. What can I add? I think your introduction was quite right. I'm a consultant in organizational change. I've been working the past 7 years on technology adoption, so it's I've been working a lot on collaborative tools and social network inside the organization. I work more with multinational corporations. And myself, I have been over 20 years in multinational. I've been in IBM, AT&T, and GE. And now as a consultant, I really work with the human complexity. So when I talk about change, communication and so on. Sorry?
I had to stopping on this side, but I don't know.
Okay. Go back. I will continue. I will continue very fast. So it's more working the complexity, the human complexity, and helping management do their job. And Bjorn is frozen, but I will continue. And I'm currently researching on middle management and how middle management is getting transformed by the digitization in the broad sense, meaning digitization, it's collaboration, but it's also change of business model. It's also how the information itself is transforming.
Okay.
And this is who I am. Oh, wonderful. You're back. Okay.
Yes, I'm back. Great. Thank you, Cecile. David, to you person.
Well, I didn't quite hear that properly, Bjorn, but do you want me to do it? You want me to introduce myself, I guess? Okay. I'm David Terrar. I'm one of the 3 founders of a company called Agile Elephant, with Janet Parkinson and Alan Patrick. They're the other 2 founders. We're a startup. We started in January 2014. There's a common thread between the 3 of us in that we've all got 20 or 30 or more years of business experience, combined with 10 years of working with social tools. And put those 2 things together, that's the kind of the correlation of what's going on in business, whether we call it collaboration or social business or digital transformation. Our organisation is all about helping organisations understand that and get ready to deploy that in their organisations and actually transform from an old business as usual way of working to a new way of working. And so there's obviously a lot of overlap with the digital workplace concept in that. That's enough from me for the moment.
Great. I hope I've got more control on this now. So, Michel, do you have anything to add on your person?
Hello, everybody. Yes, I'm Michel Ezran from Lecko. Lecko is a small consulting company. 25 consultants specialized in digital transformation, which means that we are helping our clients to adopt digital technology and especially new ways of working. So we are doing a lot of coaching and everything around change management. We are working for large organizations like Air France, KLM, like Orange, like Vinci, like Michelin, so big corporations. Prior to that, I was doing this job, but for a large corporation, which was Renault, and I was in charge of, in some way, the digital transformation of the company regarding enterprise social networks, among other things. And 2 years ago, I decided to become a consultant, which I already was before joining Renault, actually.
Okay, thank you, Michel. So last but not least, Paul.
Thanks,
Miller.
Bjorn. I'm Paul Miller. I'm the CEO and founder of the Digital Workplace Group. We have 3 parts to what we do. We have a membership side of our business where major organizations are subscribed to the Digital Workplace Group. People describe us as an enterprise Gartner. We also benchmark everything from intranets to unified communications, HR. Our most popular benchmark at the moment is on the maturity of the digital workplace. And we also have a consulting side to our business. I've written a couple of books on the field. One was The Digital Workplace, How Technologies Liberating Work in 2012, and The Digital Renaissance of Work, which I wrote with our Director of Research last November. And I think it's partly my fault and Jane McConnell that people talk about the digital workplace, because I think we were both the sort of early adopters and users of this term.
So, Paul, let's start with you. As you said also yourself, that you a little bit coined this term together with Jane McConnell. So what is your idea about the digital workplace? What is it? Is it a kind of a tool, and what kind of tool? Is it an advanced intranet, or what is it?
Well, I think it's the interesting thing is I define it in 2 different ways. One is that we know and understand the physical world of work, all of the offices, factories, warehouses, shops, etc., that have populated the world of work since the Industrial Revolution. But increasingly, where we have found ourselves working in the last 20, 30 years are increasingly are in digital environments. So the digital workplace are all the places that we work that aren't physical. So the experience we're all having right now is probably right at the edge of the current iteration of the digital workplace. So we're all located in different places. We're connecting reasonably well using the technology that's available. So it's the digital world of work. The other way of thinking about it is it's the whole collection of different tools and technologies that populate the workplace, from email, intranets, unified communications, HR systems, mobile, iPads in the hands of logistics guys who are making deliveries to your home, etc. And what I would say is that it's very interesting why has the term become so popular? Because when we first started using the term digital workplace, it was really a term that really hadn't been used. Now we have a Gartner hype cycle just on the digital workplace. So they see this as not just a fad, if you like, but something that will have a period of gestation and growth and then become embedded into the world of work. Avanade, who are a joint venture between Microsoft and Accenture, talk constantly about the digital workplace, Deloitte and so on. So this term has really helped create an industry, and I think one of the reasons is you can't quite define it precisely. It's a moving, developing experience. But I often say that intranets are essential, but the digital workplace is transformational. And I think it's really moving the center of gravity from the physical world of work to the digital world of work.
So, what is, Michel, you're also doing quite some research, as I said before, together with Lecko about, well, mainly it's still coined to the term of social collaboration. So what are your thoughts about the relation between social collaboration and the digital workplace?
Yeah, well, there are different ideas and concepts that are more or less overlapping and recovering. There is a concept of digital workplace, as Paul presented it very well, and there is the concept of social collaboration, or that is based around the tool sets that are enterprise social networks. We're also talking about social portals, enterprise portals, intranet. So those are more intranet tool that allows employees to access their everyday tool set, and that are of course, as you mentioned, Bjorn, the social collaboration is the underlying practice, because of course we don't ask employees in corporation organization to consume information only, but to become active and to use different tool sets to do their job. So clearly, the social collaboration inside the company is probably a key practice inside the digital workplace, I would say, or based on the digital workplace.
Okay. David, what are your thoughts about the digital workplace? So you are always a lot of writing and talking about the digital wave that is coming over the companies and transforming them. So and there you're talking about different developments and evolutions, technology-wise, but also culture-wise. So is this at the end, all these waves, the results of these waves, is this a digital workplace?
No, that's you've partly said what I was about to say. I mean, I think we've been talking digital for 20 years now. Nicholas Negroponte put his book out, Being Digital, in '95, and Don Tapscott put his book out about the digital economy in '95, and we've been using that term on and off for 20 years. And actually, we're living through a massive technology disruption that's changing the world of work. And when Gartner calls it the nexus of forces, and IDC calls it the third platform, and Brian Solis calls it the big wheel of disruption. We, as you rightly say, Agile Elephant's kind of metaphor for it is that it's a digital enterprise wave, and at the heart of that are technologies like cloud, happening at the same time as we're all moving to social, happening at the same time as we're all carrying around the internet in our hands and working from mobiles. And although we in the workplace have been using PCs and on our desktops for decades, and then we've been carrying them around with them as laptops. Suddenly, everybody's got one of these. 75% of the UK have got a smartphone and access to the internet. That change has changed the world of work dramatically, because you can have access to information and technology at your fingertips everywhere. And so it as Paul rightly said, it changes the nature of the workplace, because suddenly the workplace is, you're carrying it around with you, as well as the physical offices and customers that you go visit, and that changes the way we do things, the way we think, and the potential business models that we adopt quite dramatically. So yeah, it's a big change, and I guess the other thing I'd say is that we started our there's something different going on in the last 18 months to 2 years. When we started our company in 2014, we actually started it calling ourselves a social business consultancy, and looking at how you apply these kind of collaboration tools to make your organisation more effective. By the middle of 2014, we'd changed our messaging to say we were a digital transformation company. And it was interesting that what Michel said and what Paul said and what Cecile said about what they do, there's an awful lot of similarity, all talking about digital transformation and helping organisations make use of this stuff. It's absolutely changing everything, and it's a vital importance.
Cecile, you're also doing some research in the field of how managers are perceiving this digital transformation towards this new kind of workplace. Now we heard some different perspective already on what is the digital workplace. Mm-hmm. Would you, from the first results of your research, would you agree that the managers already perceive that there's a big change and they have to change their mindset and so on to cope with this new work setting for the future?
Yeah, well, I agree with everything that was said. And to me, basically, there has been two disruptions. The internet allowing connectivity and being social virtually, and also everything that is mobile. So that was said, and it's dramatically changing the workplace or the world of work. But to me, it's now broadening, because 4 years ago we were only talking about social networks and collaboration, and now the issue is much wider than that. It's business model transformation. There is no day nowadays when we don't hear about Uber or about BlaBlaCar or Airbnb or things like that, and it's really changing business model at a very, very fast path. So about the research I'm doing, it's basically about middle management. You remember 10 years ago, we were saying the enterprise is going to be flat. And I don't think it has flattened. In some very small organizations, startup, it can be flat. It can be up to companies of 1,500 employees. It can be flat, can be organized flat. It takes very long to be organized flat. But I don't think multinational companies can go flat. I think they still need middle management. They still need middle management and top management and a kind of hierarchy, but it's dramatically changing. It's not anymore the command and control that we knew 20 years ago. It's not even the participatory management that we knew 10 years ago. It's changing again in many, many different dimensions. And the research I'm running right now is to find out how actual middle managers in big corporations feel that change and how they are getting prepared or how they push it back. I don't know. It's really open. So I want to find what will be the middle manager in the big corporation in the future. Very ambitious.
So but we heard, well, from the first round, we heard that for me, there's always this question of hen and egg. So we heard about from Paul, intranets are essential, but digital workplaces are transformative. So for me, this sounds to me, and this is an open question to you all, that we always need first the technology to transform the company in the second step. So this is also turning out of your answer. So there's always this technology involved, and on the other side, we have always all these talks about that we need culture first, the culture change first, that we can make this thing successfully happen at the end. So what are your answers to this? Maybe we start with also with Cecile and Paul afterwards, because you brought up also the culture thing.
Sorry. Yeah. Well, it's the basic chicken and egg question, and to me, it goes. The two statements are right. You need the technology to become digital, and you need also a purpose to become digital. If you think about just the iPhone. That was probably 10 years ago. Nobody would have expected smartphones in the workplace, and nobody would have wanted them. And at the very beginning, nobody wanted them. But it's just here, even without a purpose, everybody has it now. So technology is very pervasive. At the same time, when you think about big transformation in the organization and getting digital, getting more collaborative work and so on, here you need a purpose, especially if the company, if the organization is not a technology one. So you need to start with a real strategic change where digital is useful. That's really my point. If you just try to put the social network, enterprise social network in the organization and wait for the people to come, you end up with a totally empty tool that might be even hacked by internal communication for wrong reason or whatever. So really, if you want to transform the organization, you need to have a purpose to do it.
Could I come in, Bjorn?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel quite strongly that the term culture has got a lot of problems coming, and that is, if I ask you to point to me the culture of Total or even the culture of Volkswagen this week, you cannot show me in any terms of data and metrics what the culture looks like. It's a black box. It's a secret source. Nobody understands what it actually is or how to change it, really. And I think if you read the book by the director of HR from Google, you can see that data and metrics and information flows are going to infect, in a positive way, the world of work and start to provide data that's been sadly missing on culture. And I also think into this vacuum steps technology. And here's a couple of examples. In Barclays, which is a heavily regulated bank, they introduced, within a very short period of time, mobile technology throughout the retail bank. They sent 10,000 iPads out into the branch outlets. They created apps called MyZone. They had digital eagles, young people inside the organization who were given the power to mentor people inside the organization. And it completely transformed the culture of the retail bank of Barclays. If you'd have tried to do that through the HR department, the communications department, forget it. They took a senior guy with a clear strategy and a mandate, and he brought the change around. Similarly, if you look at somewhere like Zara, where they've taken shop assistants and they've turned them into market researchers who can influence the design, the manufacture of goods that then appear in the Zara stores. So they stop being, if you like, dumb shop assistants, and they become intelligent researchers, engage with the customers. And so there's a real problem, and I think HR has got a real awakening coming because of its lack of information around culture. And I could go on and litter you with examples where the technology is very much the thing that will drive the change. What you do need to have in each of those examples, whether it's Zara or Barclays, is a clear strategy and some real determination to follow through.
Yeah, so, but this means to me, David, that well, we just need some kind of digital enablement of our staff, and then everything is happening.
Yes, I mean, that's very easy to say in one sentence like that. I mean, I think, I guess what I'd say is this change is happening, and agree with what Cecile said. I mean, we can't, we're not going to actually change the nature of the workplace and get rid of all of our middle managers and flatten the organisation. That's not going to happen, because organisations are going to be run or be structured in a particular way. What has changed, though, is the nature of communication in and around that organisation. So the smart companies have got intranets, have got enterprise social networks, have got communication going, so that when something happens, there can be communication from the CEO of the company right down to somebody doing something in a bank branch, or on the shop floor, or in an area of the business. And we've got some great at the show, for example, at the Enterprise Digital Summit next month. We've got some case studies from organisations like Bupa in the healthcare sector who are doing that, and their CEO gets directly involved when something happens. Goes, some projects happening in some branch of the business. He'll go instantly and comment or blog about it. So although the structure of the organisation isn't changing, the communication and the hierarchy, as John Husband would call it, of connections across an organisation are surfaced now in a way that they weren't 10 and 20 years ago, or even 5 years ago, because these kind of social networks are there, these kind of collaboration tools are there, because we're actually walking around with access to the internet all the time. So the nature of the way it's happening is changed. And from that point of view, how do you make that work? I mean, we as organisations are going to use more and more technology, both in our product that we deliver to customers, and as an organisation to actually make our lives better and do a better job. So yes, it's about technology, but the complication we've got is that we're actually talking about quite a collection of different tools. There's an awful lot of education that's going to be done within our organisations for people to actually use those tools properly, and there's a lot of leadership that's required from the people at the top and at all levels across the organisation to actually make people realise, wake up to the fact that they'll do a better job, deliver a better service, deliver the products quicker for their customers, and do a better job for the end customer. Because at the end of the day, the businesses are actually about creating customers and making them happy. Even Jack Welch of GE said that this business of organisations being about stakeholder value was a complete load of rubbish. Actually, these tools help us actually get to the heart of what an organisation is all about, what the actual value they're going to create, what their reason for being is. Problem we've got is an awful lot of our organisations have kind of forgotten why they're doing what they're doing, because they've got tied up in the day-to-day mechanics of delivering things and forget about the actual purpose, the reason that the organisation started out in the first place.
Michel, what are your findings, or what are your learnings from your research also? What are the drivers for bringing this transformation forward?
Yes, from our research, we're doing the studies we're publishing every year, and from actually what we are all saying since the beginning. I think there are three levels to be considered: the level of the cultural level, the level of practices, what people actually do, how do they work, how do they collaborate, how do they manage. So Cécile insisted on the management practices. And also, as David mentioned, there is a level of the tools, the technology, of course, which is still to be considered. And it's about digital transformation and it's about technology. So in the term digital workplace, there is the work, which means that we are in a professional world. The digital workplace is it's a place where you work, as Paul recalled. So in the professional world, we have different problems that we don't have in our everyday life, in our experience of using the technology in our private lives. The main difference is that in companies, basically, you cannot. There is a kind of inertia. You cannot change things so easily. You cannot change the tool as easily as Google, for instance, does, which means that inside the company you have a history, you have different levels of tools, and all the user, all the employees we see in our research and in our project complains for lack of visibility, that just don't understand. They have so many tools to do similar things. They don't understand. So this is really something very strong about technology usage in the professional world. The employees are lost a little bit, and that's where the digital workplace comes, and that's why it's so important. It's the idea to make the life of the employee simpler and easier with digital tools. It's to put things into order, because currently in most company, in large organization we are working with, it's like a mess. And you have many tools to collaborate, to work, to do productivity, and there is a strong lack of visibility. So really it's important. I think the first mission of the digital workplace, I would say, would be to clarify things.
Okay.
Bjorn, can I just make some kind of an observation on where I think we actually are right now in the digital workplace journey? Because I think we're all aware that there are quite a lot of obstacles and problems that we face, and I think one of the things that we probably don't quite realize is that we're right at the beginning of this digital revolution. I mean, Padmasree Warrior, the CTO of Cisco, said that we probably realize about 1%, maybe 1.5% of the potential of the digital revolution externally as well as within the world of work. So we're currently in this very clumsy, difficult stage of wires and leads. You know, we're using Google technology. Google likes to think its technology is the best around, and even our experience, all of us here, is pretty kind of clunky. So in a way, we can see where this is going, to a world where the flow is going to feel much, much smoother, far more integrated, and the fragmentation that you talk about, Michel, has been sorted out. But we're right at the beginning of it. But we can actually envisage where it's going to take us. But it is going to take a little bit of time.
You're right, but
Can I be controversial?
Okay, let's go. Cécile, be controversial.
I would like to be controversial on both what Michel and what Paul were saying, because I don't think it will clarify. Don't hope for clarification. I think it will remain complex because the technology evolves much faster than our work habits. So we will be constantly trying to catch up for the early adopters, and the late or the regular adopters will adopt whatever is the most useful, whatever is and one thing I agree with Michel is that it needs to be useful. It should not add additional work to anyone. But I disagree with the fact it will clarify. I don't think it will clarify. I think it will constantly be new technology available, new potential use, market disruption, business model disruption, and that the only thing we need absolutely to do is to develop people's agility or adaptability and organizational adaptability, just to make sure we catch up at some stage with the best of it.
Well, this just points to one thing I wanted to be controversial, also to Paul again, because I also read your book about the Renaissance of Work, where you're also saying, well, you and your co-author saying, well, yes, we need the technology to drive the transformation forward, but we also need a kind of, well, mindset, change of mindset going parallel to this, to really establish the technology and to have a successful result out of the technology. Isn't that right, Paul?
I'm not sure I understand your question. I'm ready for the controversial and well, to be challenged, but
well, for the moment you all agreed on, well, mainly that yes, sure, we need some kind of cultural change, but at a later stage, and at first we're just need the technology to make it happen. But in your book, I also wrote that at the same time we need the technology, we need a kind of mindset change in the heads of the managers to to be successful with the technology.
What I'm saying is that if you set about trying to change organizational culture, you don't really know where to start. And one of the interventions that the digital workplace offers is a mechanism and a means of affecting the culture. Now, in the examples that I gave you from Zara or Barclays, or I could give you from Adobe or IKEA, there's obviously a leadership mandate around digital transformation of the organization, around empowerment, around information being put out to the front line. I'm just saying that the levers that the technology allows are really quite substantial. It gives you a starting place. If you take a group of young people inside a bank and you turn them into mentors and coaches of older people inside the bank around technology, around digital adoption, that gives you that effectively starts to change culture. So it's really just I think it gives us a lot more tools to shape culture. One thing I would say around this, though, is that there's a demographic change that isn't just about the millennials. If you start to look at what 12, 13-year-olds are doing in terms of their understanding of technology and their familiarity of it, it really makes the millennials who've come into the workplace look a little bit kind of outdated. So I do think that it will enrich and deepen. I don't know if, I mean, I'm not sure. I think it's interesting what you said, Cecile, about it not clarifying. It's quite an interesting question. I mean, if you look at the book Sapiens, which everybody's reading at the moment, about the development of our species, the technology has always come ahead of where we were as a species. You know, we really shouldn't be in a Google Hangout right now. We should still be foraging in forests, you know, if you kind of take a normal human gestation. So we're pretty good at trying to keep pace with unbelievable, bewildering things that surround us.
Can I chip in 3 things, Bjorn?
Yeah.
Last week I was sitting next to. So here's the first thing. Last week I was sitting next to at a dinner a cloud dinner I was at, a guy that is the CTO of a boutique hotel chain. So the first thing is, I mean, you'd expect him to be worried about Airbnb, but actually his business has already been disrupted by things like Expedia before Airbnb, where aggregator services are beginning to kind of take a big slice of his margin, selling selling the rooms to us across the internet. So there's an organisation. And that's true of every organisation. All of us running our organisations, we have to recognise that our business model is under threat, and we have to recognise that constantly we need to be thinking ahead and actually competing with ourselves to do a better job, and actually think about how to change our business model for the better. For the better of the customer and for the better of the business, or someone else, some other startup will come up with the idea, come around and eat our lunch. That's the first thing. The second thing is that same hotel chain, I was talking to them about, what are you doing in terms of collaboration? He's on a big shift to shift all of his services into the cloud, so he doesn't have anything in a data center anymore. He uses Google Apps for collaboration and mail, which was kind of like a company-wide thing, which actually he personally was at the forefront of, but then when he got to change, he discovered actually how crappy Google Mail and some of the apps really were, just like we've been discovering here, and they use Salesforce Chatter and a whole collection of different things. So what Cecile was saying, absolutely agree, it's messy. And it's not going to get clear. One of the complications we've got is that also we've got new consumer type tools coming along and being deployed in our organisations quicker than the CIO and the IT department can do. So that the situation is not going to get clear for a while. And I agree with Paul. We're actually, I mean, email maybe took kind of 15 years to become mainstream in an organisation, and these changes to do with collaboration and using social tools are going to take at least as long. I remember being at the Office 2.0 show in San Francisco in 2006, when we had some really great case studies of people using wikis and social tools and enterprise social networks. And let me see, there was Lockheed Martin and Wachovia Bank. And if you told me back then where we would be now, I'd be deeply depressed. However, I shouldn't be deeply depressed because it's going to take longer than I think. I'm just optimistic. I want it all to happen today because I understand it, but I'm constantly surprised by the fact that the average person out there in business hasn't yet understood the power of all of these social tools and social techniques and how they can add value. And the big thing is we have to actually make those people realise that what we're talking about actually adds value to the bottom line. This will only work if we can articulate how this is going to make your job easier, make your life easier, do a better job for the customer. And we need to get better at actually bringing it down to a real business value for the individuals in these organisations.
Yes.
We want to talk a little bit about the today, also about the drivers for getting the thing forward, the digital transformation. And as far as I can summarize now our discussion today, we talked about it's the technology really gives us new opportunities and causes some the changes behind it, also within the culture of the company. But also Paul mentioned that to drive this forward, we need this kind of mandate to do some kind of digital transformation. So how is this mandate appearing? So this is not coming from somewhere. So is this is there a kind of agreement or sophistication within the thinking of the management that is appearing at some point because they understand the technology and then they give the mandate and then we can go forward? Or how are we starting this game? So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I can try to reply on this. What we are observing now is that, of course, the people are in the company, the top manager, they are totally aware that all this digital transformation stuff is not a detail, is not a fad, as Paul said earlier. As David recalled, they understand that their business is at stake. And so I think that's the key driver for the digital transformation and for the adoption of a real digital transformation program. What we are observing is that most large corporations, I'm talking about the French market, because that's the one I know, are putting together official, very large, with a lot of resources, digital transformation program, which involve tools, technology, but also a lot of change management. So they are accelerating, they are getting organized, they are appointing CDOs, and they are not only CDOs, but a real organization around this. And they are doing so because they understand that the business is it's a key for their business in the future. The pace is accelerating, and what is interesting is that the companies are not agile enough to follow that pace. And this is why it's becoming very messy, because you have new generation of tools, of technology, of practices, of habits, of culture that arrive, that change very rapidly from the everyday life world. And the companies are more like elephant, and and for them it's difficult to absorb. They don't have the bandwidth to absorb all these change, and then this is why it's giving this kind of messy situation. And you're right, maybe it's not going to clarify in the near future, but I was mentioning the fact that there is a strong need for clarification from employees, but it doesn't mean that it will happen very soon.
Yeah, and Bjorn, can I just sort of build on that? I mean, I think, what are the drivers behind the changes we're talking about? I think we'd all agree that any organization faces an existential threat, whether you're in retail, manufacturing, whatever sector you're in. As you say, Michel, any CEO knows this is an existential threat to the organization if you don't transform yourself digitally. Then you've got people like Richard Branson, or you've got Reid Hoffman, founder of LinkedIn, saying the key part is to get this right internally with your employees. Start inside, and then it will transform outside. If you only transform your experience with the customers, and inside it's a digital disappointment and fragmentation and a mess, the whole thing has no foundation. So the driver for a digital workplace transformation is essentially to remain in business. And then you've got more specific things. I mean, we're doing work with the UNHCR, who are responsible for all the world's refugees. The digital communications across the organization and all their partners, apart from all the problems of just managing the refugees that are around, is the digital trying to support that. Then on the other hand, we're doing work with Estee Lauder, where you are trying to get people working in Bloomingdale's and Selfridges and all of the department stores to have better information about the products so they can feel more connected to the organization. So I think, having said that, I think we'd all agree this is really difficult to get right. You've got to have a clear strategy, a roadmap to understand where you are, and to make specific interventions, as we've all said, that make a difference in people's day-to-day work.
Okay, Cécile, what is your take on this?
Yes, please. Yeah, I wanted to react on all of that, because I agree basically with everything that has been said, but I don't think we're all our arguments are at the same level. As a spacey, I'm sure we will adapt. Yet there should be thousands and millions of layoffs and organization disappearing and group hurts and so on. So I think our job, or at least my job as an organizational consultant, is to help my client not disappear and not get disrupted. And yes, we need top managers, like Michel said, but I think top managers are definitely not enough. When you're in a big organization, a top manager at the top of the pyramid, he can be very enthusiastic. He can really embody the change, but then if he is in a very hierarchical organization, he will need all the structure to get the information down and down and down and to find out how to do and so on. And then it's 10 years. And 10 years later, you've missed the change and you're dead. Okay, so you're getting into the red ocean, like, you know, the blue ocean, red ocean. You're getting into the red ocean and you die. So what needs to happen? Yes, we need the sponsor. Yet we need the cultural change, but we also need a little more. How to say that? A little more initiative, autonomy from the employee themselves, and who can give that? It's the middle management. It's what I'm hoping to find out into the research I'm currently doing, is how middle management are allowing their groups, their employees, to be a little more autonomous, a little more, to have a little more initiative, while and not put in danger the whole organization, of course. But how is that happening, and how are the traditional middle managers, very command and control, very dominant, how are they transforming themselves to being to being kind of facilitator and to being kind of mentors to their guys? I think the purpose from the top is not enough. It needs to be everywhere. Everybody in the organization needs to understand that a change is needed, that we need to go in some direction, and everybody needs to, or most of the people need to find out how they can help at their little level.
So this is the revenge of the middle manager, Cecile.
I'm sorry?
This is the resurgence. It's the rebirth of the middle manager. The middle manager is back, and this time, you know, they really.
Well, maybe I will find that. I have no idea what he will find. I'm in the middle of it, so.
Yeah.
So,
no, we should have a debate about it, because I spend my time talking about a less positive story for middle managers. It would be, but you're getting me to think now.
Can I chip in a couple of things?
Yeah, David.
I mean, I think the key thing here is that, you know, whether it's the resurgence of the middle management or it's from the top, every organisation is different. There are no one-size-fits-all solutions in this environment. Every organisation is at a different stage, and some organisations have got a very good culture in place and a very good vision in place that permeates down the organisation. And then there are other organisations where, when you look at them from the outside, like say Enron, where they might have seemingly the right culture in place when you look at the way they do presentations, but actually they act very differently. Or what's just happened at Volkswagen. Amazing mistakes can be made at various levels in the organisation. We have to recognise that. So really, I think it's very definitely about leadership. It's very definitely about education, and it's very definitely about empowering your employees so that they know what they can and they can't do, and recognise that we're now living in a world where we've got real time or near instantaneous communication right across the organisation. Even if I'm global, even if I've got 20,000 employees in 35 locations, people can talk across that landscape instantly. we've got a whole collection of us here on a Hangout, and we're all in different countries and different places, and that's possible, and that's part of the way that we could change our organisations and actually recognise that although changing the culture of an organisation and changing for competitive threats is always difficult, particularly in larger organisations, the technology that's available can help us do it.
So I'd like to summarize what we've been talking about so far. So we talked about the power of the technology to get the thing out there and to emerge into new kinds of waters for the companies, but also at the same time we talked about the importance of kind of a mandate or mindset shift at the beginning to really start this thing going, and this can come not only from the top, but maybe also from the middle level, mid-level, or from some kind of people that are really much engaged with this kind of thinking and that want to drive this forward. So this is about the summary so far, but we also headlined this session a little bit also about the state of adoption in the UK and in Europe. So as we are already nearly at the end, well, we are at the end in regards of the timing of the session, I just want to get your ideas and thoughts about what is the state so far in your countries and also from the perception and results of your research. So maybe we start with Michel first, because you have a nice study that you have also presented at the last Enterprise CEO Summit in Paris. So what are your thoughts about the adoption of this kind of transformation in France, and also with your partnering with David also somewhere else?
Yes. Well, it's what I can say is that it's ongoing for sure. As I said, it's ongoing in many large organizations we are working with. They have programs, they are structuring their change management, they are doing a lot of actions, lots of initiatives, and lots of creativity around the type of events they are organizing. And as somebody said earlier, the change of culture occurs through the action. So it's by doing things that the culture is changing. It's not just by thinking. So it's ongoing, and it's very difficult to evaluate if we are 1% or 50% on the way. I think we cannot say, and I don't even know if this evaluation would have a meaning. It's just a journey, and it's ongoing journey. In France, what I can say is that, as I said earlier, most large organizations have structured program for their digital transformation. So I was not meaning that it has to come necessarily from the CEO of the company, but the fact that the CEO is usually pushing the initiative is something meaningful. Of course, it's not enough. Mostly tool-wise, what is interesting to see is that the term digital workplace is being adopted by some companies like Michelin, like Air France, have digital workplace programs like Orange. But so far, it's just a new name for an intranet portal that will just gather access to existing tool. But so yes, it's ongoing, and we are, I think, at the beginning.
Paul, what is your perception of the state of adoption of the digital workplace in the UK and elsewhere?
Well, I suppose two thoughts. One is that the digital workplace first started in the mid-1800s when we first got telephones into organizations. So the digital workplace in some form has been around for a long time. I would say, rather like Michel has said, most major organizations are thinking about the digital workplace. They, by definition, are adopting some of them, even if it's only the use of WebEx, intranet, email, collaboration, Yammer, etc. I think there's an increasing amount of energy around using the intranet as a what I call an intranet-driven digital workplace. So it can be they're going through enhancements of that. I'd say that in the UK and in Scandinavia, there's quite a strong appetite, and we see that across the US. I think there are kind of regional differences, and I do wonder whether it's probably a controversial thing to say, but the whole nature of hierarchies viewed differently by different cultures, and whether that's having an effect in this.
David, what are your thoughts on the advancements of the digital workplace and social collaboration in general within UK and elsewhere? So, are there specific drivers in the UK? Also, this thing about the government program on going digital that supports this kind of mindset shift?
I will answer that. Before I forget, as Michel said, we're partnering with Lecko to extend his research over into the UK. So just a quick advert. Any CDOs or community managers out there, we're just at the process of actually doing our survey. So if anyone wants to contact us to be part of the research that we are going to be presenting next month with Michel at the event, please make contact. But to answer your question, I think things like the UK government digital kind of initiative, that's great. That actually puts it into the mindset and the presence. I do think there's a cultural difference between the way this topic is viewed in the UK compared to continental Europe. Over here, a lot of the kind of digital and social activity is all around the external communications that an organisation does to do with marketing and communications and directly to the customer. Whereas if I go across the channel to France or to Germany, often the approach has come from an intranet that's moved out, and so there's kind of like a different nature of approach, and maybe it is to do with cultural differences. Maybe it's because the UK is a nation of shopkeepers, and we think like that. You know, if I go to Germany, there's a more engineering mindset, so it starts there. So I think there are cultural differences. I think Paul's absolutely right. I wish we had another hour to talk about that now. Yes. So, but in terms of the state of where we're at, I think we're steadily making progress. But I see a lot of organisations actually adopting the easy free tools and actually adopting things like Yammer in their organisation, because it becomes, I've already bought it with all of the Microsoft licenses that I've bought. So there's definitely more of an adoption of tools that are, in inverted commas, free like that as part of the digital workplace, along with all the other things that are happening, because as Paul rightly said, it's very messy.
Cecile, last but not least, so what are your perception also from usual research with those middle management people? Are they perceiving an advancement, an emerging state, or of this new kind of mindset for digital transformation yet?
You absolutely want me to disclose my findings before I even know them. That's a lot of confidence on my shoulders. Okay. Okay, I've not been reading all the responses yet because I'm still looking for more people to respond to the questionnaire and more people to interview. But what I've been finding out is that the one, at least, who are answering the questionnaire or speaking to me, understand the issue, understand the concepts, and are trying to find out how to progress themselves and how to help the organization. the change I have been seeing in the past years is that we were speaking about the Enterprise 2.0, and now it's okay. Everybody knows it. Everybody, all the organization understand what this is about. They don't need external consultant as we were to explain that to us. So our job is changing. It's broadening, and we're looking for more for bigger issues than just implementing the technology. We've been speaking about culture, we've been speaking about purpose, and so I think our work is broadening, and it's getting much more complex because some of it has been adopted. The technology has been adopted, but it's not enough. Well, I'd like to have just an example to you on how I agree with David. It's very different from a country to another. If you think about Africa, in some countries, and many countries, by the way, there's no laptop, no computers, but everybody has a mobile phone. And just the mobile phone plus the collaborative economy is allowing some people who never had a bank account to now have banking services. And it's a dramatic change that has just happened without anyone planning for it, without anyone like Gartner can build curves and so on. Nobody saw it happening, and it did happen. And I think this is what will continue to happen, and we'll see disruption here and there. So we just have to have open eyes, open minds, and get ready for it. And I think, yeah, adoption is happening, but the more open-minded we will be as individual or as organization, the better. The more adaptable we will be.
Okay, great. As I've been told already that we're way over time, we're coming to an end. Thank you all for this nice discussion this afternoon. Thank you all those viewers out there for listening to us on this discussion. Certainly we could probably discuss 1 or 2 hours more on this. Well, for this, we also provide, as Congress Media, some nice events. So if you're still thinking about coming to one of our events, we have this IOM Summit with Paul Miller headlining to it next week in Cologne, if you're from Germany. We have another nice meetup coming up in Paris on the 8th of October at the Lecko offices with Sodexo. As a practitioner speaking about their project, and then in London also at the end of October we have this Enterprise Digital Summit coming up with very nice case studies. So happy to discuss with you further on this subject, and yes, have a nice good afternoon, and yeah, and a nice evening. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.